At exactly 0417, 312 miles off the Venezuelan coast, a 53-year-old German submarine made the quietest sound in the ocean. Hit subscribe because what happened next is absolutely brutal. Torpedo tube doors opening. Inside the Sabalo, 64 Venezuelan sailors believed they were about to strike the USS Gerald R. Ford. They had no idea they'd been watched for 6 days. The Silent Hunter emerges. The Silent Hunter emerges. Sabalo wasn't supposed to be operational. According to leaked Venezuelan naval documents from 2023, the submarine had been scheduled for permanent decommission after its propulsion system failed catastrophic sea trials 18 months earlier. Yet on April 17th at 0417 hours, it was 300 nautical into international waters with its torpedo tubes loaded. The crew had been handpicked by regime loyalists, not the Navy's best submariners, but the most politically reliable. Intelligence reports later revealed that 14 of the 64 sailors aboard had never completed a single deep water patrol. The target was impossible to miss, the USS Gerald R. Ford, fresh from a port visit in Cartagena, traveling at 18 knots on a predictable northbound course. To anyone watching from the surface, it looked like routine carrier operations. But 300 FT below the surface, Venezuelan sonar operators were tracking what they believed was their window of opportunity. What they didn't know was that American submarines had been shadowing the Sabalo since it cleared Venezuelan territorial waters 96 hours earlier. The USS Mississippi, a Virginia-class attack submarine, had maintained passive tracking at ranges varying between 1,500 and 3,000 yards, close enough to hear every mechanical system aboard the aging Type 209, close enough to distinguish individual crew members by the sound of their footsteps on steel deck plating. The Venezuelans believed they were hunting. They were actually being studied like specimens under a microscope. But the real question wasn't whether America knew the Sabalo was there. It was why they let it get this close. Weapons from another era. The SU Weapons from Another Era heavyweight torpedo, loaded in Tube 1, had a manufacturing date stamped on its casing, December 1979, 45 years old. The weapon had been refurbished exactly once in 1998, using parts cannibalized from torpedoes that had already been decommissioned by the German Navy. Its guidance wire was original copper wiring, brittle from decades of thermal cycling. The propulsion system used a battery chemistry that modern navies abandoned in the early 2000s because of reliability issues. During the last recorded Venezuelan torpedo test in 2014, 2 out of 3 practice weapons failed to complete their runs. One suffered a guidance system failure, the other's propulsion motor seized after 4 minutes of runtime. The third weapon completed its run but missed the target. Hulk by 200 Menom. Since then, the Sabalo's crew had trained exclusively on computer simulations running software written during the Clinton administration. The torpedo fire control system required manual calculations that American submarines had automated in the 1980s. Venezuelan weapons officers used printed range tables and mechanical calculators. Their targeting solution for the Ford took 11 minutes to compute. An American Virginia-class submarine could generate the same solution in 8 seconds. But obsolete doesn't mean harmless, and the Ford's captain knew it. The Caribbean surveillance grid. What the Venezuelan captain couldn't see was the real defense. Souse arrays planted on the Caribbean seafloor had tracked the Sabalo from the moment it left port. Hydrophone station Alpha 7, positioned 40 nautical miles north of La Guara, recorded the submarine's acoustic signature at 800 hours on April 13th. By 8:15, the signature had been classified, matched to known Venezuelan submarine profiles, and flagged for continuous monitoring. The data fed directly into Fleet Cyber Command in Norfolk, where analysts built a complete movement profile. They knew the Sabalo's average speed, 6.3 knots. They knew its maximum dive depth based on hull stress acoustics, 180 mSr. They knew when the crew conducted drills based on increased machinery noise. They even knew when the captain ordered battle stations because the submarine's air circulation systems changed pitch when crew members moved to combat positions. Above the surface, a P-8 Poseidon had been flying lazy patterns since 0200 hours, dropping sonobuoys in a grid pattern that created an acoustic fence 200 meter wide. Each buoy transmitted real-time data via satellite uplink. The entire Caribbean basin was wired for sound, and the Sabalo was broadcasting on every frequency. Here's what you need to understand. If America can track one obsolete submarine this precisely, what does that mean for any nation thinking about challenging U.S. naval power? Torpedo launch and detection, torpedo launch and detection. At 0422 hours, the Venezuelan captain gave the order. Fuego, the SUT torpedo launched from Tube 1 with a compressed air charge that echoed through the water like a hammer strike on an oil drum, 23 knots toward a target 18 mi distant, wire spooling behind it at controlled rate. Inside the Sabalo, the weapons officer maintained guidance control, making tiny corrections to keep the torpedo on an intercept course. Travel time to target calculated at 42 minutes. 40 seconds after launch, the USS Mississippi's sonar operator detected the torpedo's motor signature. The classification took 6 seconds. The acoustic profile matched known SU heavyweight torpedo characteristics, propeller cavitation pattern, motor frequency, guidance, wire, drag coefficient, fire control. Solutions were calculated for 2 Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes within 30 seconds. The Mississippi's commanding officer had authorization to engage. Safeties were removed. Firing solutions locked on the Sabalo's engine room. The American crew waited for exactly one thing, the order to fire, but the order never came. Instead, the Mississippi did something far more devastating. At 04:23 hours, it activated its BQQ-10 active sonar at close range. One ping. The sound wave hit the Sabalo's hull like a physical blow, rattling through every compartment. One ping changes everything. Ping changes everything. That single ping transmitted more information than any diplomatic communication ever could. Every Venezuelan sailor aboard the Sabalo understood instantly what it meant. They'd been detected. They'd been tracked. They'd been allowed to get this close. And most terrifying of all, somewhere in the dark water behind them, American weapons were aimed at their hull. The Venezuelan captain had perhaps 90 seconds to make a decision. Continue the attack and guarantee his crew's death, or abort and surface. His torpedo was still running, guidance wire still connected, but it no longer mattered. At 42, 24 hours, he gave the order to cut the wire and blow ballast tanks. The SU torpedo, suddenly blind, transitioned to its terminal homing phase. Its active sonar pinged uselessly into empty water. The seeker head couldn't distinguish the Ford's massive hull from the Caribbean's complex thermal layers and biological noise. After 11 minutes of searching, the torpedo exhausted its fuel supply and sank, settling toward the seafloor $3,000 meter below, a $1.2 million museum piece joining the shrimp colonies and whale bones. The Sabalo broke surface at 04:38 hours. 64 sailors climbed onto the deck and stared at an empty horizon. The price of failure. The price of failure. Venezuela expended one SU torpedo, retail value $1.2 million. Operational deployment cost, including fuel, crew wages, and submarine wear, approximately $3.4 million. Political cost unmeasurable but devastating. America expended one sonar ping. Approximate electrical cost $47. The Virginia-class submarine that ended the engagement never fired a weapon, never revealed its exact position, never risked a single American life, never even accelerated beyond standard patrol speed. This represents the fundamental mathematics of modern deterrence. A $2 billion submarine neutralized a threat with a sound wave. But the real calculation wasn't financial. Sinking the Sabalo would have created an international incident requiring explanation. 64 casualties, diplomatic complications, congressional hearings lasting months. Most importantly, it would have given Caracas exactly what failing regimes crave. Martyrs, international attention, grievances to exploit for decades. Letting them surface accomplished everything without the complications. The Venezuelan Navy was humiliated, their operational capabilities exposed, their submarine force proven irrelevant, and every potential adversary received the same message carved in sonar pulses. But here's the real question. If this is what happened to a submarine they saw coming, what happens to threats they don't announce? Modern warfare's new rules. The Ford Carrier Strike Group continued its patrol route unchanged, unbothered. The Sabalo limped back to Lagua Naval Base, its captain facing career-ending debriefings. In Caracas, Venezuelan military leadership confronted an uncomfortable truth. Their entire naval doctrine was built on assumptions that died 30 years ago. Their submarines weren't invisible. Their weapons weren't unstoppable. Their geography wasn't protection. The Caribbean Sea belonged to whoever controlled the information flowing through it. And that information belonged exclusively to the United States. This is how modern naval warfare works when nobody's watching. Not with explosions or body counts, but with demonstrations of capability so overwhelming that actual violence becomes unnecessary. The message was simple and carved in active sonar pulses loud enough to rattle fillings. We know where you are. We know what you're planning. We'll give you one chance to make the smart choice. After that, the mathematics change permanently. The USS Conclusion. Gerald R. Ford sailed on like nothing happened. 64. Venezuelan sailors learned what modern naval power really means. Not firepower, information dominance. If you want more stories, the military doesn't advertise. Smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. The truth is always more interesting than the headlines.